Hey everyone, get ready for a deep dive into a topic that's generating a lot of buzz these days: manifestation.
And we're not just talking about, wishing for $1 million.
Right. We're going way beyond the surface, past all the typical vision boards and affirmations. We're going deep into the neuroscience to uncover how our thoughts, believe it or not, can actually shape our reality.
It's pretty fascinating stuff.
So let's start with the big question. What's actually happening in our brains when we talk about manifesting something?
Well, it all begins with this concept of neuroplasticity. You see, for the longest time, everyone thought our brains were pretty much fixed after a certain age, but now we're realizing that's not the case at all.
So it's not just wishful thinking. There's a real physical change going on in our brains.
Exactly. Neuroplasticity is your brain's incredible ability to kind of rewire itself, based on your experiences, your thoughts, even your beliefs.
It's like our brains are constantly adapting and evolving.
Exactly. It's this constant state of change. Imagine your brain like a network of paths through a forest.
Okay, I can picture that.
So every time you think a thought or have an experience, it's like you're walking down one of those paths. And the more you walk it, the more defined that path becomes, right?
Sure, like creating a trail over time.
Exactly. It's the same with your brain. The more you focus on specific thoughts, beliefs, or even visualize certain outcomes, the stronger those neural pathways become. That's essentially what's happening at the very core of manifestation.
So the more we concentrate on what we want, the more our brains prioritize those thoughts, and that might actually help us make them real.
That's the gist, yeah. But there's another layer to this. It's not enough to just think about what we want. We have to really feel it too. And that's where visualization comes in.
This is where it's really interesting. I've heard a lot about visualization, but I'm curious, how does that actually work on a neurological level?
Well, our brains are powerful, but they're also surprisingly easy to trick. They don't always know the difference between an experience that's actually happening and one that we're vividly imagining.
So there's not that much of a distinction between what's real and what we envision in our minds.
Right. When you visualize something you want, and you do it with strong positive emotions, it's like you're sending your brain a clear message. This is important. Pay attention.
So it's not just about picturing, say, our dream vacation. It's about engaging all our senses. It's about feeling the warm sun, smelling the salty air, really immersing ourselves in the experience.
Exactly. You're getting it. This process is called value tagging. Your emotions basically act like these little sticky notes for your brain, highlighting what truly matters.
So the stronger the emotion, the more significant it becomes to our brains.
Precisely. The more emotionally charged that visualization is, the more important it becomes. But we've only just scratched the surface here. There are actual networks in our brains that contribute to this whole manifestation process.
There are. This is news to me. Tell me more about these networks and how they tie into manifestation.
Okay, so there are four main networks to keep in mind. We have the default mode network, the central executive network, the salience network, and the attention network. These networks are in constant communication, shaping our thoughts, our actions, and ultimately, our reality.
Okay, those are some pretty complex names. Can we break those down a bit? What's the default mode network all about?
Sure. The default mode network, or DMN for short, is the network that's active when your mind is kind of wandering, daydreaming or lost in thought.
So when we're visualizing our ideal life, is that the DMN in action?
You got it. Now, the central executive network, or CEN, think of it as your brain's CEO. It kicks in when you need to focus, make decisions, or, solve a problem.
So if the DMN is busy envisioning, the CEN is like, okay, here's the plan to make it happen.
Precisely. Now, imagine you're scrolling through social media and you see a post about this amazing job opportunity that aligns perfectly with your goals. That's your salience network in action.
The salience network, what is that all about?
It's like your brain's filtering system. Think about it. We are constantly bombarded with information. The salience network helps us zero in on what's important, what aligns with our values and goals, or even potential threats.
So we could be missing opportunities left and right if our salience network isn't tuned to the right channel.
Exactly. It highlights what truly matters. Being clear about our desires and goals is like giving the salience network a search term.
That makes me think of that experiment, that one with the invisible gorilla. People were so focused on counting basketball passes that they completely missed a person in a gorilla suit walking right through the middle of it.
That's a perfect example. It's our attention network at work, or sometimes not at work. Just like in that experiment, We can only focus on so many things at once.
So if we're constantly bombarded with negativity or self-doubt, our attention network might grab onto that and make it even tougher for anything to manifest.
Exactly. We might be inadvertently giving power to the things we don't want. And that's where self-compassion comes in, learning how to manage that inner critic.
So to recap, we've got these four networks: the DMN for dreaming, the CEN for planning, the salience network for spotting those opportunities, and the attention network for, well, paying attention. But it sounds like we also need to quiet that self-doubt and cultivate a more positive internal dialogue.
That's a great way to put it. It's about clearing the way for our brains to work their magic.
This is also fascinating. It sounds like true manifestation requires a lot more than just thinking happy thoughts. It's about understanding these complex processes in our brains, about managing our energy, and taking action that aligns with what we want to create.
Absolutely. It's not a magic trick, but by understanding the science behind it and working with our brains instead of against them, we can really tap into our power to create the life we desire.
So before we explore the practical side of things, I want to talk about some of the misconceptions surrounding this whole concept of manifestation.
Great idea. It's about so much more than just wishing and hoping. It's about understanding our potential and becoming conscious creators.
And speaking of becoming conscious creators, I want to bring in this idea of purpose. Because it's not just about manifesting material possessions, right? It's about aligning with a greater vision for our lives.
100%. Connecting with something bigger than ourselves can be a really powerful force.
And sometimes those connections can come from the most unexpected places. Speaking of which, I'm thinking about Anula's story. She was so determined to get into medical school.
Anula's story is a great example of how aligning with a greater purpose can really amplify our abilities. We'll dive into that after a quick break.
So before the break, we were talking about Anula, that aspiring med student, and how aligning with a greater purpose can really boost those manifestation powers.
Right. Remember, she was so set on getting into medical school, but she was dealing with some serious self-doubt.
Yeah, she even mentioned those tough entrance exams, how much she was struggling with them.
Totally. But then she had this aha moment, this realization that just wanting to be a doctor, like for herself, it wasn't enough. She needed a bigger why.
I see. So it became less about her and more about something bigger.
Exactly. So she shifted her focus. She started thinking about how she could use her skills to really help future patients, make a real difference in their lives.
So instead of "I want this," it became "I want to contribute this."
Exactly. And that shift, that alignment with a bigger purpose, it actually helped her perform better on those exams.
Wow. It's like her purpose fueled her focus.
Right. It's amazing how that works. And it goes back to what we were discussing earlier about how important our internal state is for manifestation.
It's not enough to just think it. We've got to feel it, too.
Yes. Our thoughts and beliefs, they lay the groundwork, but our emotions, that's the fuel that really gets things moving.
So we've got to feel the right feelings, the ones that match up with those deep down desires and our purpose. It's like we embody the energy of what we want.
Exactly. But sometimes, figuring out that purpose, it can be a journey in itself. How do we even start, especially if we're feeling lost?
That's a great question. Because sometimes we can't just think our way to our purpose, right?
Exactly. Sometimes it's about taking action, experimenting a little, seeing what resonates with us, what feels right.
So trying new things, even if it's outside our comfort zone.
Yes. It's like our purpose, it often emerges at the intersection of our passions, what we're naturally good at, and what the world actually needs.
It's not just about what we love. It's about how we can use that love to contribute to something larger.
Exactly. And sometimes, those aha moments, they come when we least expect them. Like Shankar, remember him from the book? He grew up with so little, and it really instilled this deep-seated belief in scarcity.
That feeling of scarcity can be so powerful, so limiting.
Absolutely. But then Shankar had this profound realization just by observing his teacher. This teacher, he didn't have much himself, but he always made sure Shankar had a good breakfast every morning.
That's beautiful. It's about more than just the food. It's about showing up for someone.
Exactly. It was this powerful example of aligning with a greater purpose, even when life is tough.
So even in the face of challenges, that teacher was embodying abundance.
Exactly. And for Shankar, it was a total turning point. It showed him that giving is possible, even when you don't have a lot yourself.
It's like they say, the more you give, the more you receive.
Right. And it's not just about material stuff either. We're talking about love, about compassion, that generosity of spirit.
And those qualities, I can see how those could be even more powerful when it comes to manifesting.
Absolutely. When we really embody those qualities, we become magnets for more of the same in our lives.
It's like we attract what we are.
100%. But we also have to remember, manifestation, it's not always this straight line. Life throws curveballs.
Oh, tell me about it. Things don't always go according to plan. How do we deal with those moments when things go off track?
That's where synchronicity comes in, those seemingly random events that feel like, well, maybe they're not so random after all.
It's like when you think of someone and they call you out of the blue. It's like, whoa, what are the chances?
Exactly. Or you keep seeing the same book title everywhere you go.
Yeah.
It's like the universe trying to get our attention, right?
Like it's nudging us in a certain direction. But how do we even notice those nudges when life gets so busy?
It starts with awareness, with being present in the moment, really tuning in to those subtle signs.
So slowing down, being more mindful instead of rushing through our day.
Yes. And sometimes, those nudges, they might come in the form of challenges.
Oh, I was just thinking that. It's like sometimes those challenges are exactly what we need to get us back on track.
Exactly. Think back to that example we talked about, the Japanese artist Kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold.
It's such a beautiful metaphor. It's like saying our imperfections, they make us stronger, more beautiful, more interesting.
Yes, our setbacks are not failures. They're opportunities for growth and transformation.
Instead of roadblocks, they're detours, leading us to somewhere even better.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important aspect of manifestation, gratitude.
Gratitude. Okay, I'm intrigued. How does that fit into all of this?
Gratitude is not just about good manners. It's a powerful tool to shift our energy and align with abundance.
So how does that work? What's the connection?
When we focus on what we're grateful for, we train our brains to focus on the positive.
It's like we're telling the universe, hey, more of this, please.
Exactly. We shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. And that can be incredibly powerful. Remember that study we talked about? The college students struggling with their mental health, and they were asked to keep gratitude journals.
Right, and the ones who practiced gratitude, they saw such a difference in their well-being.
Exactly. And get this. Brain scans showed that practicing gratitude actually increases activity in the medial prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain associated with reward, with empathy, with value judgment.
Wow, so gratitude isn't just about feeling good, it's actually changing our brains.
Exactly. And that positive shift within us, it can have a ripple effect on our external reality.
It's like changing your inner world to change your outer world.
You got it. Yeah. It's about aligning our thoughts, feelings, and actions with what we want to manifest.
It's about becoming conscious creators, right?
Yes. And that leads us to an important point. Manifestation is not about forcing things to happen. It's about aligning ourselves with the natural flow of life.
It's about surrender.
Yes, trusting that the universe has a plan.
Surrender. That's a tough one, letting go of that need to control everything.
It's not always easy, that's for sure. But it's about trusting that the universe, or whatever you want to call that bigger force, it has a plan, even if we can't see it yet.
So it's not about being passive. We still have to take action.
Absolutely. We have to do our part. It's like a dance. We take a step, then we listen, then we respond. Effort and allowing. It's finding that balance.
So we're putting in the work. We're aligned with our purpose. But what about those moments when, even then, things don't go as planned? Those curveballs that life throws at us. How do we deal with that doubt, that disappointment?
That's where the real growth happens. Manifestation, it's not about getting everything we want exactly when we want it. It's about becoming the best versions of ourselves.
Yeah.
Those challenges, they're opportunities to learn, to stretch, to evolve.
So a setback, it's not a failure. It's a chance to course correct, maybe even discover a whole new path.
Exactly. Remember Amandine's story?
Yeah.
Trying to retrace those explorers' footsteps through Central Asia.
Oh, right. Amandine. She was so determined to get that visa to Afghanistan, but it seemed like every door just kept slamming in her face.
Canceled flights, border closures, even warnings from her boss. But you know what? She didn't give up. She trusted that something would shift, even if it wasn't the something she had initially envisioned.
And then, bam, she has that chance encounter with Rohala, who just happens to be connected to someone who could get her that visa. Talk about a synchronicity.
Right. It's a perfect example of what can happen when we surrender, when we trust the process. If Amandine had given up after the first few roadblocks, who knows what she would have missed?
It's like that saying, sometimes you have to get lost to find your way.
Exactly. And I think that's a really powerful metaphor for manifestation in general. It's rarely a straight line from point A to point B. There are twists and turns, delays, maybe even a few wrong turns. But if we can embrace the journey, all of it, with that sense of curiosity and trust.
We end up right where we're supposed to be.
Exactly. Think about Nainoa Thompson, that master navigator. Sailed from Hawaii to Tahiti, no instruments, nothing but the stars and the waves. He couldn't even see the island, but he had this unwavering belief, this inner knowing that guided him across that vast ocean.
And he made it. It's like proof that our inner compass, our intuition, can be just as reliable as any GPS.
Exactly. But we have to cultivate that connection, that ability to listen to that quiet voice within.
So how do we do that? How do we tune out the noise and listen to our intuition?
It takes practice. Meditation is great for that. Mindfulness, even just spending time in nature, anything that helps quiet the mental chatter so we can connect with that deeper wisdom.
So creating space for those intuitive insights to emerge.
Precisely. It's in those moments of stillness that the magic really starts to happen.
This has been so insightful, but if you had to boil it all down, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember about manifestation?
Remember this. The power to shape your reality. It's not some mystical force out there, it's within you. We all have this incredible ability, and by understanding how our brains work, by aligning with our purpose, by cultivating self-compassion, and by embracing the journey with trust and gratitude, we can tap into that power and create lives that are truly extraordinary.
What a powerful message. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible deep dive into manifestation. It's been truly mind-blowing.
My pleasure. Remember, every great journey, every incredible manifestation, it all starts with a single step, or maybe even just a single thought.